Welcome, everyone. I'm Dartricia Rollins, the Assistant Director of Charis Circle, the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books and More, the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. I am so glad that you chose to spend your Tuesday evening with us. Tonight's event is co-hosted by the Auburn Avenue Research Library on African American culture and history, and they will be in the chat providing supplementary resources. Say hi to Morris, y'all. And I would like to introduce tonight's guests, Tamara Winfrey Harris, in conversation with Bre Rivera, Jess Louise, Halimah Washington, and Dr. Adea Winfrey for a celebration of the new edition of The Sisters Are Alright, changing the broken narrative of Black women in America as a slew of harmful stereotypes continues to follow Black women. The second edition of this bestseller debunks vicious misconceptions rooted in longstanding racism and shows that Black women are still all right. If you have a question for the panel, please put them in the Ask a Question box at the bottom center of your screen. If you see a question that you like that someone else has asked, you can upvote it to make sure it gets seen. Now, for our special guest. Tamara Winfrey Harris writes on race and gender and has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, New York Magazine, Los Angeles Times, Bitch, and other media. She is the author of the award-winning book, The Sisters Are Alright, Changing the Broken Narrative of Black Women in America, and Dear Black Girl, Letters from Your Sisters on Stepping into Your Power. Please welcome our special guest, Tamara Winfrey Harris. Thank you.
Oh, I am so happy to be here at Charis. I always love to be at Charis, and thank you for celebrating the Sisters Are All Right second edition with me. So you need to know, if you're not familiar with the Sisters Are All Right, I wrote it 6 years ago because I was an angry Black woman. I still may be, but I was angry about the way people were talking at and about women like me. You know, at the time, every headline or casual conversation or Sunday sermon seemed to be about how, Black women are too broke, too sick, too fat, too loose, too masculine, too independent, too single. And that narrative had no relation to the Black women that I know. And that is even the ones who are broke or sick or fat or loose, etc., because the conversation was reductive and because it ignored Black women's humanity and sovereignty over our own existence in favor of old stereotypes. So in The Sisters Are All Right, I wrote about those stereotypes, Jezebel, Sapphire, Mammy, and the matriarch, and where they came from. And I interviewed more than 100 Black women about what their lives are really like, which, spoiler alert, are a lot more nuanced and hopeful than folks would have you believe. And then last year, I realized that this story needed an update. And so before I welcome the amazing guests that I have joining me today, I'd like to read the preface to tell you why. The preface starts, I love Black women. I love the Baptist church mothers in white. I love the girls who bust it on TikTok. I love the sisters with the Ivy League degrees and the ones with GEDs. I love the big mamas, muddeers, and aunties. I love the lock-wearing sisters who smell like shea butter. I love the ladies of the Divine Nine. I love the hot girls in Savage Fenty, the designer pumps and premium lace fronts, and the sisters who keep a fresh Caesar. I love the girls who jump double dutch and played hopscotch. I love the Nam-myoho Renge Kyo chanters, the hoodoos, and the atheists. I love the hustlers, scratching and surviving, trying to make a way out of no way. I love the trans sisters living out loud. I love the awkward Black girls and the quirky Black girls and the Black girls who listen to punk. I love the standing on a bus stop, sucking on a lollipop, round the way girls. I love Black women. I love us in every way that we show up in the world. Black women have claimed and asserted our power, laying new ground for collective liberation since I wrote the first edition of The Sisters Are All Right in 2015, like we always do. It ignites my spirit. We have our first biracial Black woman as Vice President of the United States, the first openly transgender Black woman serving in the Minneapolis City Council. There are 3 Black women leading the modern civil rights movement. Black women were the fastest growing group of entrepreneurs, at least until COVID-19 upended the whole world. Beyonce has broken the internet 50-11 times. And Bill O'Reilly, who had so much to say about her in the last edition of the book, well, he was fired from Fox News in 2017. O'Reilly's dismissal had nothing to do with B. I just wanted to provide a moment of schadenfreude, or in Black girl speak, you hate to see it. Black women have come a long way, but we are still not free, though. Black women organizers routinely put their lives on the line to protest violence against other bodies, while brutality against ours provokes shamefully little passion. Black women with privileges such as class and education and light skin have far better access to power and achievement, insulation from racism and misogyny sold separately. Too many of us are poor. Too many of us don't have health care. Too many of us are or have been incarcerated. Too many of us are struggling to gain a post-secondary education or are buried under college debt. Too many of us have been assaulted. Too many of us are carrying the weight of other people's problems. The sisters are still all right. That is intrinsically valuable and human, and we are still struggling. I've studied yoga for years and recently completed a 200-hour yoga teacher training. And on my mat, I've found spiritual tools to navigate life as a Black woman. I also found in a popular mantra Sanskrit words to describe what liberation might feel like for me and my sisters. Loka samasta sukhino bhavantu. May all beings be happy, healthy, safe, and free. That sort of liberation is hard to find because the world does not love Black women, not in the way we deserve to be loved. It doesn't truly see us. Our authentic collective and individual selves are usually hidden by racist and sexist stereotypes that we can't seem to shake, or rather images that other folks won't let us shake. This is confirmed for me every time I read yet another article about a little girl sent home from school, not for bad behavior or bad grades, but for having kinky hair. Every time some well-meaning pundit or preacher offers advice to fix Black women to be more marriageable. Every time some hack comedian tells a specious joke about tyrannical Black wives and girlfriends. Every time Snoop Dogg, that is, I once walked 2 bare-breasted Black women on leashes down a red carpet and ran an actual brothel, Snoop Dogg, tut-tuts at Cardi B and Megan Thee Stallion for singing about their own wet-ass pussy. Every time a young Black woman is shot dead by police in the night, every time an American healthcare system mishandles Black women's lives, leaving dead mothers and dead babies and dead women doctors who allegedly too intimidated healthcare professionals to receive adequate care. And yes, that happened right in my hometown of Indianapolis. Misogynoir, abetted by dehumanizing caricature, is like water. It fills its vessel, taking many forms, and then it overflows, creeping unnoticed into the cracks of things, rotting the foundation. It spreads a belief in Black women's inherent wrongness. It decays how the government sees us, how employers see us, how the medical system sees us, how our lovers see us, how we see each other and ourselves. I first wrote The Sisters Are All Right out of anger at the warped societal view of womanhood. I wrote it because I want Black women to be seen. I want to be seen. I want my 3 young nieces to know that their own humanity and demand, I want them to know their own humanity and demand other people know it too. I wrote the book because even if the world won't love us, I want Black women to love ourselves and to love each other. I write this second edition because the Black femme experience in America continues to bend and evolve. I am a water witch, dividing the places where racism and sexism flow. We need this. Otherwise, Black women's every seeming success will turn fetid. Black women are a million different kinds of amazing. It is not our race or gender that makes this true. It is our humanity. This book is about that humanity, the textured, difficult, and beautiful humanity that lies in the hearts of all Black women, because I love us. So that is why I wrote this second edition. And so in the second edition, you will read new interviews with new voices. I covered some new topics like the rise of the Black beauty aesthetic, and along with it, the rise of blackfishing, Black maternal mortality. Gay marriage was not legal when I first wrote the book. And so I was able to update the chapter on marriage. I talk about how Black women have been erased in conversations about police violence, even as we lead much of the activism against it. And there is a new chapter on Black women in power, because I think Black women's continued sacrifice and bold leadership in community activism and politics demonstrates resilience and dedication to getting not just ourselves free, but everybody. And that is why I can't tell you how honored I am to be joined by my panelists this evening, four amazing people whose voices can also be found in the second edition of The Sisters Are All Right. So first, I'd love to introduce Jessica Louise. Jess, who uses the pronouns they, them, is a community organizer with Indy 10 Black Lives Matter, Queering Indy, and the Louisville Community Bail Fund. Their vocation is animated by daring ideas that reshape the world through education, direct action, and restorative and transformative justice. Jess's work empowers people to reclaim and recast their past, present, and future. They operate with the boldness of Harriet Tubman, the incisiveness of Audre Lorde, and the rigor of Assata Shakur, believing that collective power will carry us all to freedom. When not advocating for radical justice, Jess loves reading, crocheting, dancing, playing chess, and laughing. They were born and raised in Indianapolis. Welcome, Jess.
Hey, friends.
Next, I'd love to introduce Halimah Washington. Halimah is a Black mama and social justice activist advocate from New York City. Halimah has over 15 years of experience in human services and has made it her mission to be a social change agent. She's been action-oriented, lobbying in Albany as an activist and advocate, fighting for criminal justice reform, reproductive justice, education reform, fair and affordable housing, and HIV/AIDS-related issues. She continues her activism efforts with End ASFA, Abolish ACS, and Defund ACS campaigns, and her advocacy efforts through her work as a birth justice defender. Halimah is a Columbia University Beyond the Bars Fellow and NYC Department of Health birth justice defender. Hey, Halimah.
Hey, I'm so glad to be here with you.
Echoing just a little bit. But hey, I told you there were going to be some amazing women on this panel. I'd also like to introduce Bre Rivera. Bre is in the middle of moving, so you're not going to see her, but she is on the line. Bre is a Black trans femme who has dedicated over 20 years of movement building for Black trans communities. She's a multi-published researcher, writer, and co-creator of the Femme Queen Chronicle, a series about the lives of Black trans women living in Detroit, Michigan. Bre recently launched the Black Trans Fund, an incubated fund of Groundswell Fund, the first fund centering joy and liberatory practices in Black transgender and gender expansive communities. Before her time at Black Trans Fund, Bre served as founding mother and executive director of Trans Sisters of Color Project Detroit, the first Black trans-led organization in Michigan. Bre is very active in various movements, serving as a board member for Positive Women's Network USA, Transgender Resource Center of New Mexico, Third Wave Fund, and grant makers for girls of color. Welcome, Brie.
Thank you so much for having me, and congratulations. I'm so happy
Thank
for you. And yeah,
you. And last but definitely not least, Dr. Adea Dia Winfrey. No relation, we think, but we don't know. We all cousins. It'll be good. Dr. Adia McClellan Winfrey, also known as Dr. Dia, is the mother of 4 children, an esteemed doctor of psychology, author of the Hype Hip Hop Therapy Curriculum, and community organizer. In 2020, Winfrey made history as the first Black female congressional nominee in Alabama's 3rd congressional district. Branded as the hip hop congressional candidate, her campaign received national attention for her use of hip hop culture as a tool of political mobilization. After garnering a vote count of over 103,000, Winfrey formed Transform Alabama, a political mobilization and education organization. Hey, y'all. Okay, first question. And I know you all agree with this because we all talked about it in our interviews. I think that the way Black women wield our power is different. The way we wield our power for liberation and community activism. But how? How is the way we wield our power different? And I know none of you are shy, so I have questions, but I want this to be a conversation. Don't make me call on you.
I think, like, for me, ooh, this echo is it
Halimah, do you have any tabs open on your computer?
I have so many tabs.
Well,
Okay.
okay.
Halimah, close some of the tabs, and it might fix the issue.
Awesome.
Close.
While Halimah's closing tabs, I think, Jess, you look like you were maybe going to jump in there. You had the double Dutch look.
Yeah, I definitely think that we organize differently from everyone else just because, we're caregivers in every sense. And I don't mean that from like a historical patriarchal sense. I mean, people look to Black women in film for answers. If you consider, how movements have started and how they've been sustained, it has been through the labor of Black women in films. Even when, if you're looking at someone as famously as Rosa Parks, you can look to Claudette Colvin and how, as a teenage, pregnant, soon-to-be mom who's also a student, how she kind of utilized, that natural youthful defiance as a Black girl, and how that was studied and, mobilized a nation around a civil rights movement. So we're definitely caregivers in that sense. I think that we also have a responsibility, and there's accountability that we share with each other. I don't know very many, Black women in war films who are out of alignment with other Black women in films. So we're making sure that we share the work. We're making sure that we're not reinventing the wheel. We're making sure that people are fed and cared for. And we had a transformative lens on things before transformative justice was able to be named and colonized in certain spaces and institutions. So we really are, the birthplace of it all, and we continue to act with integrity because of it.
I love that. Halimah, how you doing over there?
I think it's better.
Ooh, yes.
It's better? Okay. So I realized what it was. I had the tab of the actual, as usual, Black woman doing too much.
So how do you think we wield our power differently?
So for me, I mean, I veggie back on everything that Jess said. And also for me, it's just like being able to tap into radical Black love for people, community, in the world in general. So it's like oftentimes we're not allowed to love in the same way that others are allowed to love. And so because of that, we love radically. That's why there's a radical in front of the love when I talk about Black people and Black women in particular, our love for one another is radical because oftentimes we're put in spaces where we're in competition with one another and we're always pitted against one another in some way or another. And so for me, it has been just the ability to love radically.
I love that.
Absolutely. And look, I was about to be echoing too, because I had the tab open. I'm glad. Halimah, look, appreciate the tip. Like Black women, you know what I'm saying? That's what we do, you know? And I think that just even in these moments and just the experience of us, you know, experiencing this together, in the time that we've been together today exemplifies what makes us different. It's who we are. Like even when we're taking a moment to speak about what it is that we do and who we are, we still have to be who we are and do what we do, whether that's moving, whether that's orchestrating who's going to take my children to dance and to the band. You know, it's multiple layers. And so it makes us great leaders, but it's natural to who we are because we don't have the option to not lead for real, you know? And so that is a powerful piece of what makes us dope.
Bre, you got anything for us?
Yeah, I mean, agreeing with what everyone else said, but I think vision has a lot to do with it too. We are like radical visioners. And so just thinking about there is nothing that a Black woman can't do. And that's just not a phrase to be said, but to actually like see it in action, it's actually transformative. And so, yeah, I love the fact that like Black women, despite like what's going on in the world, can still like vision and dream.
I do love that. That's another reason why I love us. But now I want to talk, because here's another thing that everybody talked about, and that is the way that Black women are disregarded as leaders. How and why? And and I'd love to talk a little bit too in this area about respectability and the role that plays in addition to misogyny. And I want to read a quote from, just let me throw out, because Halimah, I lost your quote. Oh, here it is. I wanted to quote a wise woman. Halimah Washington said, "I fight against it every day, all of the respectability politics. I'm Black, I'm still in the hood, I still swipe the EBT card. I guess I would be considered all of those stereotypes. Most of my life, I've been told I don't belong in certain spaces, that I will never get to certain spaces acting in the way I do, looking the way I do, and behaving the way that I do. I need to have all of these degrees and accolades in order to be accepted in certain spaces. People take one look at me and dismiss me."
Every single time I hit them with the payal when I come through with my wisdom. I knock them all off their feet each and every time when I come through with the wisdom that I learned in the hood, the wisdom that I learned in the gutter, talking to the people, having relationships, building community within my community. That's how I'm able to go into these other spaces and let people know and amplify the experiences of people that live in the same community and are facing the same things and dealing with the same things that I'm dealing with. It's important for me to be able to amplify not only my experiences, but other folks' experiences, folks that may not have the language. And just because you don't have the language doesn't mean that you shouldn't be admitted into the room. And so for me, it's just like I'm kicking down doors everywhere. and I'm bringing my family and my community with me every single time. So when they see me coming, they get a little afraid.
And they should be.
Love that.
You know, I'm not coming by myself. I'm not coming by myself. I'm coming with my whole community on my back and some more. And we're not taking, it's like for me, it's like building relationship within my community, building community has been the thing that has sustained me in this work. Being able to talk to my neighbor, the neighbor that people ignore, don't see. It's like that is my superpower, my vision, my ability to see people, to see everyone, no matter what you're doing, what your level is in life. I see everyone and I acknowledge everyone.
Can't help the community if you don't want the community in the room.
But oftentimes they talk about we want to help the community and not having the community in the room, but they want to pick and choose who they uplift and who they elevate, who they bring into the rooms. And I'm like, yes, I'm coming in the room, but I'm also bringing other impacted people from these impacted communities into the room with me.
And that's real. That's like, you know, and for me, it's like, even if you have whatever degrees and whatever accolades, you know, my blackness, you know, me being a Black woman automatically disqualifies me in their mind from the conversation, or makes me, you know, like I don't belong there. And as a doctoral student, I made the decision that I was going to be me. People told me like, well, you're not supposed to act like that. You're getting your doctorate now. I'm like, what's the point of earning these degrees or getting in these spaces if we forget who we are? That's why we don't come up as a people. So I love what you said. Just, I mean, everything. Like, I completely feel you. And, you know, that is another piece that makes us different. Y'all just, this night is just awesome for me, because from the preface on, I mean, it's like, as a Black woman, like I said, we're living this stuff. And so I'm getting filled up. You know what I mean? So I appreciate you, your quote, and just, you know, everything you just said, Halimah. That's really resonating with me right now.
Well, Dia, tell us a little bit about, because there's so much media hype and focus on Black women in politics, but it is always as secondary figures. Like, everybody was, yay, Stacey Abrams, look at what she did to flip Georgia, but you didn't want her as your governor. You know, love her or not, you know, Kamala Harris, nobody wanted her as the president, but the minute Joe Biden became president, it was like, you know who would make a great sidekick? A Black woman, because a Black woman could do A, B, C, and D. So let's go get us a Black woman. So we are always these secondary figures in doing all of this work. And I know you have experienced that locally. So will you talk a little bit about that? You're on mute.
They love for us to be the mule, but don't want to, you know, give us our credit, don't want to give us opportunities, even if we're the most qualified. And when I entered politics, it was based on my community organizing background. And my opponent, bless her heart, because it was a primary election. She was a novice as well, but her only resume was that she had won Miss America 5 years earlier. That was literally it. That was it. No background in anything. And she didn't even win it in Alabama. It wasn't like she was Miss Alabama and then she became Miss America. She won it in another state. But the higher ups, the powers that be, decided that I was not a good candidate because I was a Black woman, and they were putting all their eggs in her basket, not just putting the eggs in her basket, but working in opposition to me. And it was great. You know, everything happens for a reason. And I didn't win the most votes, but people felt me. And that allowed me to be able to do more, just even as being an example to other people and just pushing the message that the power is with the people. You know, they want us to believe that because we are of the community or in the community that we don't matter. But truth be told, we are very powerful when we unite and come together. So I just saw that as an opportunity, because if it's left to them, the powers that be, whatever, whether it's politics or, in education, they want to exclude us for the very reason why they always want us to lead something or work from behind the scenes. It's our power. It's our, we've said vision several times, our vision, our courage. Anybody needs that. You want something to pop off, you find a Black woman. Or if something is popped off right now, it might not be a Black woman's face that you see, but somewhere in the mix, behind the scenes, somewhere, what I'm saying, it's always a Black woman behind. Like, please believe it's going on, So politics is frustrating, but again, as long as we keep in mind that the power's with us, we could do whatever. And I've here lately been watching several elections swing in the Black woman's favor, because despite money and everything else, we're realizing we need to be selfish with our power when it comes to politics.
I am loving all the quotables tonight. If you want something to pop off, get a Black woman. I love that. I need that on a t-shirt. Bre, talk to me. What is your experience?
Yeah, I agree. A couple of things. The first thing that came to mind is that, we've gone from a society that was about community to just thinking about ourselves. And so that's very apparent in, what folks are saying now. And it's a lot of weight for Black folks, Black women particularly, to have to do that work on behalf of community. I also really, Halimah, it really resonated to me when you said that we don't speak the language. And it made me think, how many times or how many ways do I need to say that I need help? Mm-hmm. And that really stuck with me to my first point. But it also reminded me that last year I launched a fund for Black trans communities. And it's been very important for that fund not only to fund Black trans communities, but also to be ran by Black trans communities, something that's not seen in philanthropy. And reminded in this conversation as the reason why I did that is because I never wanted our folks to have to go and beg for folks outside of community for money, support, resources, right? And understanding that it's not just our responsibility to do the work, but it's also our responsibility to fund the work, right? Mm-hmm. And so, really wanting to encourage our folks to just create things. I also am very aware that, there's a spirit that, Black women particularly are going to get less. We're not going to be supported, and wanting to just kind of share with folks that I kind of experienced that in the beginning. But I think with good politics and, and being with and surrounding yourself with good people and doing the work out of good intention, that there's enough space, resources for us to do all of the things. And so, I think right now the world has just reminded me that the things that Black women have created are the bomb. We as a collective need to invest in those things more, and excited to see all of the things that are coming from Black women and that will be coming.
Yes. Jess, you talked really eloquently in the book about misogyny. And so that part of working in our communities and having to deal with half of our community pushing back. So
you want another quote for the t-shirts?
Oh, yes.
I said the other day, the trade will never lead us to liberation, but they could join us when we get there. And that was me reminding myself that sometimes we got to leave the men alone. And we got to do this work on our own. And they could join us when we get there, but definitely don't bring them right now, please.
As a queer femme, I agree. I agree. What were you saying, Tammy? I'm sorry.
Oh, no, I was just allowing you to hold forth because you spoke so eloquently on that in the book. So I was just, yeah.
I mean, the jokes, I mean, I think, as a trans person and being transparent, I've been just struggling with my own identity. And it comes from, it's internal, it's external, the people that you care about try their best to support you and they can't. Sometimes you just have to do these things on your own, and just kind of like sitting and reflecting on like, I've been a woman for almost 20 years and still haven't like figured out like what that means for me. And I think the thing about misogyny that's come up for me is that, I think as an ambitious Black trans woman that's successful and unapologetic, that a lot of how I show up in the world and my power gets translated into, all of the negative things, masculinity, and yeah. And I was riding in the car, just kind of doing some reflection in myself. And I just started busting out laughing because I thought about it and I was like, I'm my fucking mom. And my mom is like one of my favorite persons. She's like supported me, never made me feel uncomfortable about my transition. Always just kind of been solid in there. And the things that I was like, that reminded me that I'm her child is that like, she laughs at everything. So she's just funny. And that's her way of like just coping and like making things happen. She will always take care of the people that she loves. And my mom is a thug. Like growing up, like watching her like navigate like relationships with men was always so funny because I'm like, why are these men like attracted to you? She is like in no way like feminine in those ways, right? And reminded that that's how my mom shows up as a woman, and that's how I show up as a woman, and that's okay. And so saying that, all that to say, like, I think holding a lot of love and space for masculine identified women right now, because I know that like that shit is hard. Like you want to be a thug, but you also a woman too. You know what I'm saying? And like having to like always have to like explain and defend that it's just not always easy. So yeah, before I ramble.
Brie, somebody wants you to write your quote in the chat, and then I'm gonna, Jess, you had something to say.
Yeah. I don't think anybody who has organized is a stranger to what misogyny looks like in organizing urban spaces, particularly misogynoir, particularly in alignment with misogynoir. One of our local healers, Mashera, is a licensed therapist, and she always causes me to like go deep with her reflections. And she was like, Uncle Tom was a trauma survivor. And I'm like, yeah, but he sometimes you just gotta make sure that the clip is ready. You know what I mean? Like we're all wrestling with some form of trauma, whether it's trauma by the state, intracommunal trauma, interpersonal trauma, childhood trauma. Is something that we carry with us, but we have to be committed not to bleed all over other people as we're dealing with our own stuff. Mm-hmm. So the misogyny hurts and the misogynoir hurts. I have to constantly battle between, do I cross the line into over what people consider to be appropriate as far as someone who is feminine presenting to make my point and to move some stuff forward, or do I just stay where I am and pick my battles? I'm known for crossing the line. Because that's just where we are. There are, historically and presently, people don't value Black women in films. They still look at our labor as needing to be unpaid, uncompensated, and not acknowledged. They steal our ideas. They come in on group projects and walk off with our babies, if you will. And there's just a lack of integrity around the care that we have for Black women in films that is deeply rooted in these patriarchal BS ass systems. Mm-hmm. as a facilitator for transformative and restorative justice, I'm always encouraging people to consider things with context. You know, if you're in conflict with someone, how did that arrive? And what aren't you considering about this other person that might help you arrive to a point where you know where to establish your boundaries? Because the lack of it causes the state to be involved. And the state is disappearing and killing our people at rapid rates and allowing for Black women to fall by the wayside. Things that are intended for us, that are specifically structured for us, have been co-opted. You know, the Say Her Name, and I was guilty of it before I had an understanding of what Say Her Name was specifically constructed to illuminate police and state violence against Black women specifically. So to co-opt that and to turn it into something else when people are already getting into the streets for Black men, people are already, you know, marching and petitioning and donating and lifting up Black men. It's not to say that that's not something that doesn't need to happen, but I worry that the tens of thousands of Black women and femmes and children who go missing, that the scores of Black trans women who are murdered at the hands of community and their names go unspoken, who are we forgetting when we're exalting the importance or the validity of someone's humanity in our Black communities over the other? So as loud as people are going to be for, you know, George Floyd, we also need to be just as loud, not just for Breonna Taylor, may she rest, but also for Ayanna Stanley Jones. We need to make sure that we're following these Black trans deaths, that we're not just expressing sorrow and regret when our Black trans folks are killed simply for being who they are. Because you can't do nothing with regret when you're dead. We need to show up for people while they're alive and make sure that they have what they need to carry on while they're alive. I'm willing to do it with a hammer and a gun if I have to, you know? And people don't like that. People see you as feminine presenting and they think you soft. I'm soft when I need to be, with who I need to be, okay? To have your daddy if your mama wasn't hating. Amen. No, I couldn't, because I'm queer. That doesn't affect me. That's hip hop. Right. You know, Dr. This, you know.
But you know what? And also the violence and the way it's almost like you saw my script, because I wanted to pivot to talk a little bit about how not only are we erased as leaders, but the way we are erased as victims of institutional and systemic racism, primary victims, not secondary because of our connection to men. We are primary victims. And in addition to racism, we are at risk in our own communities. Like Toyin Salau died leading protests for George Floyd. And she was a victim not of police violence. She was a victim of against female violence in her community. And those things that are very important to our lives are often erased, along with the violence that we face, police violence and other violence that's related to racism.
And I always try to connect the dots for people, how that interpersonal and that intracommunal violence is also state-sanctioned violence. So when we show up to city council meetings and we're demanding and we're pleading and we're cussing and we're ready to throw down, against the state, it's because we're hearing the urgency and, people are pressed up against us with their needs. You're dumping hundreds of millions of dollars into this entity. I don't know what other job, child. The white man got the police jobs on lock, all right? You talk about job security. I feel like they get a raise every time they kill a Black person, But it's something that we continue to have to wrestle with, and it's all state sanctioned. It's not something that, domestic violence occurs everywhere, true. But in the suburbs, you're less likely to have those discussions of, money issues, job issues, outside external stressors that come into the home and lead to violence against whoever the feminine presenting person in the home is, whether that's a woman of femme or a child. You know, in Indianapolis, we saw that happen when the stimulus checks rolled out and somebody killed their child's mother because they believed that they were due. Now, they could have had their issues before, but what stuck out to me from that story was the state promised us a portion of something, and that portion was not enough. And people have already delved into the desperation of this pandemic, right? You've taken away people's ability to gather, which for us is a cultural and necessary convening. You've taken away people's ability to get money how they're used to getting money. And then you're offering them crumbs because of it. And you think that people are just going to sit in their house with their lights off and be okay with it. No, that's violence that the state imparts against us. And we have to be careful that, because it would be very easy, you know, to look at these individual things and to just look at them as individual instances and not hold the state or city leadership accountable when they're the ones who have introduced these things into our lives and have separated us from a wealth of resources that there's enough for all of us to share. But instead of that being something that's led with, they're giving us crumbs and then giving the police and all these other people hundreds of millions of dollars. What do you need with $261 million if you ain't doing your job? You ain't doing your job. You ain't shut down nothing.
And then we
just want to go to the hood and look at people.
And then we left to fight over the crumbs.
Which is why I said earlier, there's more than enough resources for us to do all of the things.
Way more than enough. I think about the movement I'm involved in here in New York City, the movement to like abolish the child welfare system, and just thinking about all of the ways in which that system targets, surveils, and punishes Black and brown moms, but more so Black moms than anything. It's like as soon as the moment you hear a Black woman is under investigation for child abuse or neglect or maltreatment, we automatically think the worst. We never think people never think about, oh, well, it could be a mistake or the state is possibly targeting or like surveilling and it just all of the things that the state does to our families and to us as individuals. It's just like, I fight every day to center Black women, Black girls, and my trans nibblings and siblings. And it gets exhausting. The amount of times where I say explicitly that my work is to center Black women, Black girls, my trans siblings and nibblings. And people are like, but what about Black men? What about the programs for Black men? What are we going to do for Black men? And I'm always like, wait, there are many programs, there are many services that are for Black men. But when we talk about Black men, we never, ever talk about Black women. Black women are always left out of the conversation. And when Black women being left out, our trans nibblings and siblings being left out, it's just like, and then we're left sitting here still fighting over the crumbs to do the work.
So what does it look like to support that work? If we were to really support Black women in doing what they do, what would that look like? Or put in a different way, what do you need? Because all of you, everyone, you said money.
Housing.
Look, I think we can all agree.
I think also if we invest the same amount of money and resources as we do into the state, into Black women, we would live in a different country. Also, really annoys me that like basic history will teach you that the state, which is the United States, and I'm particularly talking the United States of America, right, was created because a bunch of white men came over here, colonized some land, and then told the people that they were a part of back home that they were going to do whatever the fuck that they wanted to do, and made up their own set of laws and systems to be able to do that, right? And so for me, I think it's sad because I understand and I appreciate all of the work that Black people do on behalf of the state. But a piece of me really wishes that we had the same amount of resources that were being pumped into Black communities, Black businesses, Black organizations to actually shift the way that things are ran in this country. But in all actuality, I continue to get upset in seeing that as soon as we make some type of progress in the world when it comes to like the state, the rules change. And just wanting to like just name that, like for me, I think it's just reminding me that I got to invest in my people, and that means with not only just like with time, resources, how I do things on social media, and the things that I divest in.
I definitely think, I definitely agree with Brie. I think that people will view our individual and our collective power, and they'll figure out how to institutionalize it.
Mm-hmm.
And not necessarily to the benefit specifically, explicitly for Black women, femmes, and children, but that's seen as like a byproduct of institutionalizing whatever power it is that we've built within our community. It's not, oh, here's an issue that is specifically targeting Black women, femmes, and children. Let's assign intention and rigor to it and make sure that we don't let up from it. What would our communities look like if we devoted $261 million in a guaranteed basic income to the neighborhoods that need it the most, that are led by Black women and femmes overall? Like Brie said, we would see a transformation. It's difficult, having to tote that line and having to decide, okay, do I move with intention and rigor and maintain my own integrity in grassroots organizations that can't support the benefits that I need to be mentally and physically well, that the pay is uncertain, if at all, that I have to parade my Black trauma and pain as a non-binary Black femme in order to get people to assign some level of worth under capitalism to my message? Or do I allow for my voice to be institutionalized and have my basic needs taken care of on a consistent basis, but allow myself to enter into a violent, disruptive system that was not crafted for my particular voice, right? I'm homeless right now, so I'm having to wrestle with those things, having to decide like, okay, I done put in the work for years, and especially the last 2 years, and on record for putting in the work, and I'm helping everybody else with their stuff, and I'm homeless. I know how to fix it, but am I going to last in those roles, in those institutionalized spaces that were not crafted to celebrate my Black queer brilliance and my radical critical lens? So do I enter into those spaces temporarily, knowing that I'm bringing the power and that I'm simply, allowing myself to be used as a catalyst for whatever resources they have and hoping to turn some shit around? Or do I continue to struggle? It's easy to talk about, doing something that's principled when all of your needs are met. If you don't have a house key to your name, you start to rethink some stuff. So I would love if people actually invested in Black women, femmes, and children when it's not popular, when it's not on CNN, when cities aren't going up in flames. We saw a lot of people last year and organizations who came to our chapter specifically and were like, Black Lives Matter. But that's not reflected in policy. It's not reflected in procedure. You're still committed to your same bureaucracy that actually hinders and impacts and harms Black people. And just because you yourself are not the police, you're participating in the same surveillance and the benefits of state surveillance that the police do through your paperwork because of metrics that you have promised to your donors. So how do I allow myself to enter into an institutional space with that radical understanding of who I am and with their radical understanding of who I am, and be honest and be like, I'm here because I need a consistent check. I need to know that if somebody hands me a check, that it's going to clear. I need to know as an independent contractor that I don't have to chase anybody down for a few $1,000s for work that I've already done. Or do I stay on the grassroots side where I know that I can move freely, but my most basic needs are going to go neglected? I'm tired of putting in applications for, relief. I'm tired of looking for co-signers. I'm tired of crowdfunding for my most basic needs. Like, Black women are exhausted. We're exhausted. I had a panel earlier today, and somebody from the audience asked, how do you deal with resiliency in the face of so much? And I'm like, I actually want y'all to pivot away from looking at me as a powerhouse. I don't want to be that powerhouse. I don't want to be resilient. I want to be deliberate and vulnerable. I'm grateful for the words of Audre Lorde when she said, I am deliberate and afraid of nothing. And I draw on that when it is necessary for me to do so. Ultimately, I want to be affirmed in all of my Black queer humanity. And in order for that to happen, some serious resources that will sustain me are needed. And it's exhausting. I've been homeless for 3 months. I'm so tired of asking people for stuff, I don't even know what to do.
I felt that in my soul. I just got a denial letter from the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, SNAP or food stamps, stating that I make too much money to qualify for those services. And I'm like, I don't even, what are we talking about here? I wouldn't be applying if I had enough money to eat. And so now I'm in a space where I need to choose between eating and working.
And the fact that we have to ask the state to help us care for our households when there's no mandate for a livable wage. We've been fighting for 15 for so long that is no longer a livable wage, even for a household of one. I don't have no kids, no dependents, no nothing. I help support, other people who do have dependents, but of my own, I have none. But the fact that we have to go to the state or to charitable organizations and to ask to be treated as human, not just have to ask, to have to apply in order to be affirmed as being Black humans, in and of itself is violent. It is violent. I want to see more unrestricted funds for Black women and femmes and children to pull from. I want to see people pivot from being DEI facilitators who just hold workshops for people to go and regurgitate book clubs in their all-white churches, white spaces, and white homes into a reparations track. I want to see co-signers. I want to see people give up the land. I want to see CEOs resign, and I want to see these boards dismantled. I'm actually tired of us giving our power to the state and then allowing for white people who frame themselves as allies or co-conspirators to introduce those resources to us, when you should actually, on stolen land, be separating yourself from your excess of resources. If it's not a sacrifice, I don't want it. Try to have somebody send me $5 for Juneteenth one time. I was like, what am I?
You better preach, Jess.
Jess done went up on this occasion.
Did you enjoy your tall latte?
And I don't even drink caffeine. I was like, there's not a Black person alive I know that $5 could make or break their day. It doesn't spell sacrifice. And I'm also not going to get into a classist conversation about, white poverty and who's able to give what. Because again, you want stolen land. You should have made something shake by now. Okay? God knew to make me Black. Because if I was white, baby, y'all probably have to reel me in like we're going to have to reel in Biden. Okay?
Right.
So we definitely need to find ways to circumnavigate the violence that the state insists on continuing to impart in our lives, because I'm quite exhausted on sending in applications to underscore the dignity that I deserve as a Black femme. And I don't want to do no more applications. You done already seen the work. You done already called me to help you do some of your work for free. I had somebody call me and was like, we want you to come speak at the university. I gave them my fee. They were like, oh, let me see what I can do. Baby, don't call me. You should anticipate what my fee is, add 150% to it, and have the check ready when you ask. I should clear the check before I arrive to where you want me to be to add social capital to your space, because you're not connected to your community. And I am.
We gotta let that sit.
Marinate. Brandy in the chat said the preliminary DOJ investigation is saying that 10 million is needed for reform of the Louisville Police Department, the department that killed Breonna Taylor. What if that were invested in Black women? I think if there is something, and I know we're running out of time. I know, but this is too good. If there's something like these Black women, these Black femmes work too hard. The ones you're looking at and the ones you don't see right here. We give too much to the community to have to beg to survive. Imagine what, as much as Black women have done for the community, for the country, imagine what we could do if we were supported and we didn't have to worry about where the next check was coming from, and if we were safe, and if we had a home over our heads, if we had food to eat, and if our children were safe, if all of those things were taken care of, imagine what we could do.
And not even just supported, but given our worth and our value. Like, that's the whole thing. Like, if you just pay us for what we do and compensate us for the things that we doing, it would be good. And then furthermore, by paying Black women what they're worth, you're not just helping Black women, you're helping Black men, because there's not a Black man in this world for real that does not have a Black woman attached to him that is supporting him or a major backbone for him, whether that's a partner, a mother, a sister, a auntie, a friend, because that's what Black women do. You also are supporting children. You're also supporting the church. You're also supporting every civil rights organization that exists, from the NAACP to the SCLC to whatever we're going to talk about. You know what I'm saying? All them letters. BLM, whatever we want to say. Like, that is what you're supporting, every organization. You're also supporting just everything. Like, that's the thing with us. We are connected to everybody, and just because of that, we're not going to hoard this stuff for ourselves, because that's just who we are. It's like, it's just so frustrating when, hearing what Jess is saying, because I don't even know, but I don't know you, but I know exactly. Like, I felt every word of that in my spirit. And, going back to what I said again about Black women, what I learned with politics, we have got to use our skills, resources, know-how to help each other. Now we still gonna do our community stuff or whatever, or family, but we got to be selfish with each other with these resources. And it was funny. I think it's in the book about the quote I said, to our party leaders, Black women that did enough for free. Don't call my phone. I said, unless you have sent me a invoice or you have sent me a contract, do not call my phone. Do not email me. They were like, what if we want to ask you, if it's not no check attached or no invoice that's coming with it, don't call my phone, period. You see what I'm saying? So I feel you, and we got to get like that. But when it comes to us, like, it's resources I want to share with you, or just sit down and talk about how you can monetize things. Because that's what I had to figure out, when I decided to leave my marriage with 4 small children. And I was not the breadwinner. I was a stay-at-home mom, and everybody's like, well, how are you going to do that? And just figuring out ways to monetize the skills I had. I couldn't afford childcare because, all my children were small at the same time. And so I had to be at home. And so just figuring out ways that I could monetize what I had. And I've been doing my thing, since 2011 hard. You know what I mean? I mean, it's a struggle, but I'm just saying, finding ways to position and help. So I definitely want to be a resource or just see, you know, now they look, I'm trying to get to the bag as well. But, you know, it was just things that you said that I know exactly what you're saying. Like, I feel you to the fullest. And, you know, I just appreciate you sharing that. And Halimah as well, you know, with when we're in positions and needing help, because it's like, you know, I done been there with SNAP benefits, with the Medicaid and all. You know how they say you make too much, but it's like, this little bit of crumbs is nothing. Like, what do you mean I make too much? And then you see people who have been passed down this generational wealth or these things, because even poor white folk got it popping. They got a boat or some land somewhere. I mean, they be the one you be like, really? You know what I'm saying? And it's just, it's mind-blowing, but it's not when you understand the history of this country and the present of this country. So again, like I said, we Black women, and we even though we in this space, we're living it. This is who we are. These things that we speak, these strategies that we have, is not just because, you know, it's the hot thing to do. This is how we have to exist and live and survive and thrive. And I think that that point has just really been amplified tonight. So I appreciate what you guys are saying.
Yeah.
So I want to end this by lifting up Black women. I mean, I hope what everyone has learned tonight is that you can learn a whole lot from us, a whole lot from us. And we do a lot of work. And we deserve to get compensated for it. So I hope in addition to, so I'm going to ask everyone to lift up Black women doing work, past or present, that people should know. But I also hope everyone that's on this panel will drop their contact. Like if you have an organization, if you got a Cash App, whatever you got, drop it down there, drop it down there in a chat so that people can support your work however you do it. I will say, after this delicious and juicy conversation, I want everybody to go check out the Cohambee River Collective statements, because that as a foundation for Black women's work and liberation, I think is so, so important. So that's what I'm going to lift up. Brie?
I'm going to lift up two people: my mom, Beverly Ann Rouse, and Monica Jones, a Black trans woman that reminds me that Black trans women deserve joy every day.
Yes. Halimah?
Well, I'm going to lift up two people. So it's Genevieve Williams Comrie with Afro Resistance. And I'm going to lift up BX Rebirth and the founders, Evelyn Alvarez, Nicole Jean-Baptiste, and Carmen Mojica. And that's BX Rebirth and Afro Resistance orgs.
Adea?
I want to lift up my mom, Juanita McClellan, for just being a strong, beautiful Black woman. And she actually stepped into politics and won school board some years ago. And also got to lift up my sis, Councilwoman LaTanya Tate in Birmingham, Alabama. She was just sworn in today, a Black woman that everybody said should not run. Why are you running? You don't stand a chance. And my sister knocked on over 11,000 doors, beat the incumbent, and we shook up City Hall today because we went up in there loud and proud. So got to shout out Councilwoman Tate on this evening.
Jess?
Woo. Who do I want to lift up? It's so many. I always like to encourage people to look at like the collective thing, because I think one of the things that we can do if we're lifting up individuals, unless they're people that, you know, we have a personal, deep connection to, that we can be accountable to and that are accountable to us, it's very easy to idolize people and to place them on a pedestal. I believe in giving Black women in films overall their flowers. I would definitely say to look towards the most marginalized of us. So we should be looking at our disabled, you know, women in films who are fighting the same fight as we are and are facing unimaginable conditions. We should be lifting up our Black trans, folks who are continue to be swept under the rug, but who we steal from culturally and professionally. We should be looking at single Black moms. We should be looking at Black children. We should be looking at how the policies and procedures in our workplaces and in the communities that we live in can ultimately impact them. I am going to plug myself real quick. I'm a restorative and transformative justice facilitator. I am certified in both. I also do conflict transformation. I am wrestling with, how present to be in those things, because I have to take care of my basic need right now, which is housing. So I may not be available necessarily to teach or facilitate, but I also do offer paid, guided conversations for people who are interested in, and am available to come to your university or workspace to begin those conversations and to connect you with accountability partners if you're seeking for a deeper connection past the traditional workshops that DEI facilitators usually offer.
I'm just dropping my Cash App and PayPal in the links.
You all are beautiful. You are brilliant. I am so, several times I almost cried a thug tear, because you all are you are amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for lending your wisdom to my book, but also lending your heart to this evening. I love you all, and you deserve the world. You really do.
Thank y'all so incredibly much. I did shed many thug tears from the preface to the end. This was an incredible event. I just want to remind everyone I know we can't see the audience on camera, but please clap your hands for this amazing panel. Make sure you buy the book from Charis Books and More. You can purchase it through the link at the bottom. It's the till link. It says, "Buy the Sisters Are All Right." And I just want to remind y'all that a lot of really great resources were dropped in the chat. The chat will be here to stay. So even after the event ends, the chat will be here. Find people's PayPal, Cash App, website, everything, and hit them up. Book these people, because this was wonderful. The conversation will also be archived on our YouTube channel with closed captioning. And I just want to say a big thank you again. Tamara, Halimah, Adea, Jess, Brie, y'all are fucking brilliant. Thank you so much. Everybody have a wonderful night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night.